So Sprint Vector is what we call an adrenaline platformer. It's basically a mix of a parkour running racing game. It is set in this environment of the Sprint Vector Intergalactica competition, which is essentially like we have this maniacal robot who's gone through and captured a bunch of willing, unwilling contestants and put them into this death race kind of scenario. And you're basically one of those contestants. It is a very action-packed, active VR experience. And when we say active VR at Servios, we really mean that you're putting your entire body into it. You're really kind of feeling that embodiment, that sense of presence that VR gives you. And particularly with Sprint Vector, it is a racing game and it's all about foot racing, so you're actually running with your hands. And the way that that happens is you basically put one hand forward, you hold down on the trigger, and you swing your arm back and you release. And from that, you kind of get this forward momentum and you just keep building on it. And that's just the starting spot. We just layer on mechanics after that. We allow players to run, turn, we allow them to jump, we actually allow them to double jump, and then from that fly, we have braking mechanics that also work in midair so that you can come plummeting straight down. We've put in drifting. We have power-ups, so it feels very much like a kart-style racing game. So if you fall back into like 8th, 7th, 6th, you will be able to get like nitros and overdrives with like lift the speed limits on your movement system, so you could just go rocketing forward. And while you're up in the front of the pack, you get mines to like plop down a bunch of fields to slow people down and everything, or blast people with the rockets. At Servios, we have so many of these like prototypes that we've created. We've created a bunch of them in the past, and Sprint Vector was one of these prototypes. And before we even knew anything about like, okay, we're going to create the system where you use your hands like this and all that, and that's going to move you forward, Sprint Vector already had climbing. We'd already experimented with climbing in the Sprint Vector prototype, and you could actually reach out, grab a knob, pull yourself up, etc., and move and like fling yourself. These mechanics already existed. From that, we were realizing that, hey, people don't really get sick from this stuff. It's kind of amazing because we also have trackpad movement in there, and that's totally blasting people. Like they're immediately feeling nauseous and they don't want to do that, but as soon as they grab these knobs and it has that one-to-one feel, that just completely mitigates the nausea factor. Now, we didn't make that prototype immediately. We went on to make raw data and we learned a lot from that, and we specifically developed teleshifting in raw data, which was like making the player fly through the air at like 1,000 miles per hour basically. So those two aspects of it, the fact that climbing worked inherently and that teleshift was kind of driving the player through space so quickly, led us to try and piece these little bits together to create the fluid locomotion system, which is like, hey, well, what if you were kind of grabbing these knobs that don't exist in midair? And what if it was actually a much smoother thing and it was kind of adding this momentum constantly and just constantly layering and iterating and throwing stuff out that doesn't work, looking at the community around us to verify if certain things do work. And then in the end, we kind of ended up with what Sprint Vector is now, which is this incredibly fast, incredibly arms-driven, head-biased kind of thing that just kind of works. After we implemented fluid locomotion in the game, it completely changed the game. And from that, we're like, okay, so obviously we have a competitive game on our hands. This is a race. But is it just a pure race? Or are we just going to have people that are like trying to outwit each other, outrun each other? And from that, like there was a lot of potential for competition, but we really wanted to add in power-ups to the mix to kind of shift things around and give people who maybe they fell behind at the start, give them a chance to actually get back to the pack. So we have all these different types of power-ups ranging from mines to rockets to nitros. Inherently, the player actually has this glove blasting ability, so it's kind of like an Iron Man blast that they can shoot out of their hand. They could use this to destroy pots, obstacles in the environment. They could use it to blast switches on walls that'll turn on and off spike pits. Or they could use it to defend themselves. So if a rocket is chasing you, you could actually turn back around and blast that rocket out of the sky. It's not easy to do, but it is a thing. It's part of the strategical depth. And from that, every time you run through one of these power balls, you'll get a different type of power up that you could just activate the same way. And there's a lot of opportunity for mixing these things around since the mines have very different feels to them. There's high gravity, low gravity, there's an explosive impulse, there are homing rockets, there's straight line impulse shots that blow people backward, or you could even use it on yourself to kind of impulse jump, rocket jump, forward. Very risky stuff, but we just kind of give you the ability to do all these things. And on top of that, we also have like this ultimate rubber banding mechanic of chrono shift. When you're dead last and you're like, all hope is lost, chrono shift will actually teleport you to the closest person, so you can keep in the race. Get another nitro, get an overdrive, and just like boost forward to third place. So the way the racing maps have been constructed, it's very much in this 3-tier design philosophy, where it's like there's always going to be at least 3 major options for a player in any section of the map. So we'll get to one area and we'll say, okay, we have the basic path. This is what everybody's gonna take. This is tier 1. In fact, it's paved with track. It's not very bumpy. So if you were to just stick to it, you'd probably be fine. What is tier 2? Maybe it's a little bit off the track. Maybe it's a little bumpy. Maybe you'll start getting flung around. You have to actually fly and jump. But maybe we'll incentivize it. Maybe we'll put a boost there, or maybe we'll put a power ball there. So maybe if you're in the middle of a race with somebody, you quickly make the decision, and it really turns into these split-second, high-speed decisions to go off, pick up a power ball, and like maybe use that to flip the race. And then on top of that, it's our 3rd-tier path, which is just like, okay, at this point, you know the fluid locomotion system, you know what you can do with it. So we're gonna give you a pretty big advantage, but it's high risk, high reward. If you take this path and you mess up, you might just fall even farther behind. So it's interesting how it plays out in multiplayer, because it's all these paths swirling together and you kind of feel like you've drawn this line through the map that you want to take. But if somebody blasts you out of your line, you fall back to another path and you just kind of have to deal with it. You have to make split-second decisions. Players pick it up and they kind of see the potential of it. And what they'll do is they'll go through all the tutorials and learn what they can. They'll go do a race and they'll realize like, that was okay, but I could do better. And so they go back and they practice again. We have an entire skate park lobby environment, so you could literally just practice to your heart's content. It has a bunch of stuff around the outside. Basically every mechanic that you'd want to practice is in this environment. So what we found was people were going to this environment, practicing these skills, and then coming back to the races, and they get a little bit better. And well, in Sprint Vector, if you get a little bit better, all of a sudden you have more opportunities open up for you. It feels more free. And that sense of freedom drives you to like the game more, to experience more, to try and master these mechanics that were simple to learn, but there were just so many of them. There's an entire toolkit of things that you could be doing. And it's amazing how people have attached to it in that way, and they just keep coming back. Sprint Vector is available on Oculus Home and Steam through the Oculus and the Vive headset on February 8th, and it'll be available on PSVR February 13th.